I need empowerment. You cannot tell me to be a Maponga. You cannot empower me to become a Mukanya. You can't empower me to become a Fusijana. Intrinsically, I am. All it takes from you is recognition. But there's nothing in your space as an outsider that could say empowering. So between me and you, the whole concept, for example, of empowering women. How do you empower powerful people? Because every man,
they were made that way.
No matter where they are, when they close their eyes in the night, their chest is next to another woman. Whether it is wife, it is girlfriend, it is a prostitute, it's an adulteress, it is. But 6 months later, the man has actually put his ear next to a woman. The question is, what are our women? And I'm using the word our, understanding you are in that space, because it talks of ownership, so I'm aware of that. But you, when you have a husband, you call him my man. So there's nothing wrong with me calling you my woman, because you also call me my man. So on that level, let me put it right clear there. You call us your man, we also call you our women. You don't have a problem with that. If you have a problem, let's talk about it later. But in the midst of all this conversation of ours, etc., then the question is, intrinsically, what are the women, the queens, the mothers, the wives, whispering in the ears of the presidents, whispering in the ears of the ministers, whispering in the ears of the UN, whispering in the ears of the AU, whispering in the ears of the WTO, World Trade Organization, IMF. That guy was running IMF and etc. They have women that are sleeping. What are women telling men in the 21st century? I want a Tiffany, I want a ring, I want flowers. You forgot my birthday? You spent the whole day without phoning me? You blue-ticked me. I'm trying to look at a list of when you sit with your man and you are talking to him, are you discussing issues of family importance, community importance, national importance, continental importance, global importance? Are our women cued to global thinking? When you come back after the break, I want to grill you a little bit more. Don't go away. I'll be back with you just after the break.
Make massive moves.
The space race has already started.
Russia had got the first object in space.
The coast is as wild today as it was when Europeans settled the continent.
Enormous beasts with enormous thirst. The teams are primed and ready.
They got the first animal in space, and they've got the first person.
Time to see what the boys can do.
Make massive moves with Starsat. Make massive moves.
How can you say that?
That is what it is.
Your mother eloped with someone else.
I just think this is such a genius idea. I think it's amazing.
I can be happy.
It's inside you. It's inside of all of us.
It's about cooking smart that are nutritious and delicious.
President Trump acknowledging the coronavirus death toll could be significantly higher.
You don't want to do this. There is nothing you can take.
Surviving roommates scared.
The heavyweights arrive.
Inside finds Pachulia, blocked by Jane.
This is the will of God.
Make massive moves with.
Thank you very much and welcome back again. We are hosted, I'm hosted. I'm not hosting today, I'm hosted by Tambudzia Mzenda, who is into women empowerment, and she's worked in that space as a researcher. She's a public speaker and a mother and a sister an empowerment activist. So take us through. I threw some few questions at you at random because I want you to plug into my headspace. Then our conversation can be more meaningful. What's your response? What are 21st century women saying to 21st century men? When they come out between your legs, what are you saying to them? These men. When you kiss them as boyfriends, what are you saying to them? When you ask what name must I give this child as a husband, what are you saying to them? When you divorce the man and you say you're no longer going to see your child again, what are you saying to them? When you are living together and you finally die together, I'm giving you many scenarios. What the women who are able to maintain it, what are they saying it? The women who are breaking it apart, what are they saying? The women who have children that are in prison, what are they saying? The women that have children that are becoming deviant, but what are women saying? I want you to respond to that.
Women are saying a lot of things. I'm not able to answer for all women, but I'll answer for some women who are struggling to find a place that they belong to because everything seems so foreign. They are struggling, they don't have jobs, they don't have men who love them, they've been abused, and there is women who are thriving, who are single, who are making it, who are in the corporate world, who are in the business world. There are women who are in the business world, who've had to go through the ladder, the corporate ladder. Some of them have had to deal with sexual harassment. There are women who have made it understanding who they are, understanding what talents they have. There are women who are understanding their spirituality and saying, I love my family. I know who I am. I know why I have been made to be in this world because my God has placed me here with gifts that I have. I am going to use them as best as I can. There are women who are saying, I love this man, but we have a problem. What do? They go and see psychologists. They do whatever else they do. We are coming from a very, we're going into a very difficult place where I, as a child, when I was growing up, what I saw, maybe let me go back there. Then I can give you the dynamics of how maybe things have changed for different women. I grew up in a village. My father would take me to school.
What village was that?
In Gokwe.
Where in Gokwe?
In Gokwe.
I worked some time. I did some work in Mpumalanga, Songwala, and went up to a place they call. I want to find that place in Gokwe.
Jelele. Tambudzia.
Tambudzia, yes. I was looking for that Tambudzia, yes. Tambudzia.
Yeah.
That's where you grew up?
I grew up in Jelele, past Jelele, Pansi, far.
No, but those mountains there.
Yes.
In those valleys there.
That's right.
Tambudzia. You can hear the name sounds like Honolulu. Can anything good come out of Tambudzia?
Absolutely. I came out of it. My grandmother, a woman who who took life to a next level, had a small farm. She moved back to a family's home because her husband passed away, so she's now a widow. She takes my father and his siblings. They go to Gokwe. She finds a small space, and in time she wants a bigger piece of land. And my grandmother was amazing. She made maize meal and she also made sweet potatoes. My grandmother understood how to preserve food for the longest time. So during droughts, during famine, my grandmother was able to do all of those things.
She could sense ahead that famine is coming.
They could see from how
from grasshoppers and birds and the wind, the way it's moving. They say, hey,
and when the
and you make me miss my grandfather, you know. You'll be sitting there under the tree, then he goes, Azukuru. You know, and grasshopper's going to be coming from, but no, he saw something running across the thing. He had the bird singing, and he combines all those things, and he goes, "Hey,
I don't see it right. There is a drought."
I cut you there.
Yes.
I cut you there.
I see my grandmother. You see,
and she don't have a problem accessing the land.
No, she didn't have
the issue that African men abuse women in terms of getting them land. It's not true. You are telling me a story where grandmother wanted land She found it.
She found it.
Then. To look after you and your father.
To look after me and my father, and I spent a lot of time with my grandmother looking after her goats. That's what I did. Looking after her goats.
Milking the goats.
Disbanded from looking after the goats.
Goat milk is good also for.
I knew about goat milk before
cough.
I got it from special shops in South Africa. So I used to have it straight from the goat.
Yeah.
So I was then demoted to looking after the goats.
Okay.
And my grandmother would also be able to have sweet potatoes preserved. She would take marasha, charcoal. So the ashes, and then she'll be able to dig a hole, puts the sweet potatoes in, and then covers that. And we could have, in the next season, sweet potatoes.
In Shona, my grandmother used to do the same. We call it fimbi.
Fimbi, that's right.
Fimbi.
You've got it, fimbi.
You dig a hole in the ground. Then she would go to the river and go and get some shrubs and leaves.
This also.
Plus marashaiwao, because actually charcoal absorbs water and helps whatever you are preserving not to moisturize and ferment around it. So you put lots of marasha in the thing and some eucalyptus leaves, magam trees.
Yes.
They would also find some other shrubs. Something I was stupid those days, man. I should have been. If I was there now, I would have been taking notes to say
intellectual property of this film.
You know what I mean? And this is a fridge.
This is a fridge. This is a fridge for the sweet potatoes, because once the season ends, you are able to have it in the next season.
The next season.
I am trying to capture the essence of a woman in the times that I can remember my grandmother, that she was capable. So when someone comes
so
and
your grandfather
says,
had passed away already?
My grandfather had passed away already.
So your grandmother actually looked after your father. Your grandmother looked after your father.
Single-handedly raised my father and his two brothers.
Wow. And there you are.
And here I am.
And the picture of grandparents you have, it's of a grandmother.
That's my grandmother, the powerhouse that I know, because I know how hard she worked. And my father, remembering his mother, said, mai vangu vakandiitira zvinhu zvandisina kumboziva ende ndikatadza kuvatenda. Mai vangu vaishanda. She passed on.
No, you must go home for Christmas. Instructions from me to you. Go home for Christmas.
I will go home for Christmas.
Go buy a goat in the Tambudzia area there. You kill the goat. You call the neighbors to come and eat the goat. And just say thank you.
This also.
That's it. There's no witchcraft more than all your religious education put together will not pass that. You're going to remember that. Gratitude.
Gratitude.
Even going to church, what they call worship and what not. The baseline
is gratitude to your parents, honoring them.
Your mother, because I'm going to come to you for the third one. We've talked about grandmother now.
So my mother, the same, a young woman who comes to South Africa to venture for greener pastures, hardworking, works as a clerk, and then in due course she's working as a domestic worker. And the difficulty of having family. So I don't see my mother so often. I live with my grandmother because my mother is working.
Supplying the
she's
supplying
working
the shoes and the Christmas time you have plastic bags of things from a woman you never knew.
But to an extent, being deprived of my mother because she can't come as often. So my parents have moved here. My parents are now here in South Africa. But
they left you with the grandmother.
My grandmother was here.
Oh, she also came down?
She also came down. I came to live with this is my grandmother, my father's mother. This is my grandmother, my mother's mother, whom I live with as a child.
Your maternal side.
My maternal side, whom I live with now. And it talks to me about a time when I could not be with my mother because my mother had to work for other people. To make a living.
Looking after other people's children.
Looking after other people's children.
In abusive spaces, they were actually breastfeeding those children. And, of course, it cannot be said on record. In some cases, some of those Afrikaner men converted our mothers into wives. The starting of the colored community in the whole of the Eastern Cape and Western Cape cannot be spoken outside of the adultery of colonial white men and their obsession with black women.
Yeah.
So, but
that's a different story for another day.
That's a different story for another day. But it is a can full of worms.
And so there's my mother also trying to make a living. My father is working elsewhere. They are separated. The law separates them. The apartheid system separates them. You need to have a dom pass. You need to have this. So to talk about family in a time like that, and these women, what they're going through, that's a different whole ballgame. Men have been also removed from their women. Men have been put in mines. The roads have been built.
And you end up with a girlfriend there.
There is women who are provided for these men because then they don't have to come back.
Yeah.
Because coming back home means they might lose the work, they lose the labor. So you think about that.
The colonial system was well thought through.
Absolutely. It's well orchestrated for labor. That's capitalism. It's well orchestrated for
destroy
the
African, destroy his family. And once you do that, you're able to destroy his children. And disenfranchise him. Imagine you leave your old folks there in Mzimba or in Hluhluwe. The man is now in Johannesburg. And you leave a woman on an estate, all by herself. The only white man in the village, 60-kilometer radius, is the white man, who is the father, by the way, strategically so, because he's religious. He's a father. So the father figure of the community is this white man. By the time the Boeros in the place want more land, when does a woman have a chance to write a letter to the father who is working in Treefontein in the mine in Lebanon to say now the white people are coming here asking for the land? Most likely by the time the husband gets back home at the end of the year, it's gone.
The land is occupied.
This is the reality.
It's tilted.
This is the reality. I went to a place down in Mpumalanga, Dawson's. It's a beautiful holiday resort. Took a drive there the other day. You drive on the farm, beautiful hotel, next to mountains there, lakes, game, and everything else. But guess what broke my heart? When I was taking the game drive, I saw graves of black people. I saw old mud huts. In the distance, I mean, it's almost like 15, 20 centimeters left as these properties and these houses are, because they are organically made. They are deteriorating into the ground. But the graves are still standing strong. And this farm now belongs to a white man. And when the black people want to come to this farm, just to do some rituals on the graves, you must phone the white man. You must get a booking. You must get access to first. And our title deed to the land is not a piece of paper. If I can stand next to a grave and say, check the DNA in these bones here. Check the DNA here. If we are the same, this land belongs to us. That's African thinking. So I'm just trying to respond to the fact that your mother is now working in the kitchens. You don't have an opportunity to spend time with your mother. Mind to share a little bit of that corner?
I think it's difficult for me as a young child not having the love of a mother, because I think my mother's priority is the labor. My mother's priority is income. My mother's priority is ensuring that she keeps that job by any means. So
don't understand that.
It's such a harsh reality of this disconnectedness where we talk about, you raise something about modernization or imperialistic wanting these things. At the same time, there's nothing that surpasses family. Everybody wants a family that cares for them, that loves them, because that is the grounding of who you become.
But now you understand.
But if it's not
I saw a small little girl here when I was coming to studio, Maya, and I said, I think that's your daughter, yeah?
That's my daughter.
Now you understand, yeah?
I do understand.
So when you wake up in the morning, say, love you, mama, see you later. Oh, mommy, where are you going? I'll see you later. And you have to run. The same passwords are being sent through. The African woman must actually strive to survive, sacrifice the things that are important to her.
Family. But we have a choice, perhaps, for some. who understand their journey.
The little few that you mentioned earlier.
The little few that I mentioned earlier. The few who are sort of breaking the light, breaking into the light. So I think that's a challenge for the African woman who is breaking boundaries. Also, the ostracization of that woman, okay? Because also I am now wanting a better education for my daughter. I also want investments. I also want wealth. I also want a piece of land.
The land in Tambudzia is still available. Let's take a trip.
I will take a trip and get some.
You so just go back and say, my grandmother's, where did you bury her? Here or there?
No, in Gokwe.
Back at the...
She's buried back where she used to sit when it was very hot after she had finished cleaning the yard. She would sit there and just reminisce about the world that she was in. And I knew she would be buried there because when I went home after she had passed on, I walked and my father said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to my grandmother's grave." He says, "How do you know?" I said, "Because I've seen her there." And she was buried there.
When you come back after the break, let's get some sentiments here. I had planned something for the interview, but as you know, here on Sankofa, things just have a way of going their own way. Just after the break. Your host, Maponga J. My guest tonight is Tambudzia. Women empowerment is a subject of study. We'll see you after the break.
Make massive moves.
Wow!
Let's go. Come on, we can be back by morning.
Who are you?
I'm the boss.
Really?
Really?
Yeah!
Awesome. Totally.
Very funny.
Make massive moves with Starsat. Make massive moves.
You're the best fighter in China.
Give me the Emperor's sword, and I'll spare your life.
Shisha sector's gone too far.
Make massive moves with Starsat. Make massive moves.
Deceiver!
There isn't any time to waste then.
We can't save everyone in this war.
One moment, that's all we got.
You're locked in here with me.
Make massive moves with Starsat.
Maponga J with Jenna here live with you on Galaxy Universal Network, and we're beaming here on the Sankofa program. Our guest for tonight is Tambudzia. Yes, my is it Tanya? Eh? What Maya? Maya
Makatida.
Eh? Oh, Makatida. That's your full name.
Maya Shilova Makatida.
Oh, yes. It looks like Maya Chiluba. Chiluba sounds Zambian.
It's Tsonga.
Tsonga. But Chiluba is also the Zambian president there.
No, Shiluba.
Chiluba. No, but it's just phonetics. Bantu.
It's just phonetics.
Bantu is one
it's
big
Shiluba.
Chiluba
Shamina.
Oh, okay, Chiluba Shamina. Oh, with flower.
Yes.
Okay. The father is Shangan.
Yes.
Okay. And the last one? You said Maya. Makatida.
Makatida Muzenda.
Muzenda. All right. You were sharing some stuff. I cut you short there just before we went for the break.
Yes.
Just trying to reminisce on the complexity, maybe the amount of trials that the African woman has to go through. On the first session, we looked at grandma. The next session, we tempered a bit with your mother. And a little bit on that, you were still telling me the sentimental value of you actually having to understand your mother is there, you are there, and now you're a mother. Maybe that gives us to the third session, where we've done your grandmother. I need to call you for another session, actually, where we can now begin to deal with the show that we were supposed to have today, which is women empowerment. But as a presenter's privilege, I always have a chance of picking up other things behind the woman. It's nice for people to also to get to know you, understand your values. By the time you're coming up with your message, they have an idea. So maybe the last 2 sessions, 15 minutes, we can begin to look at you. In the last session, I want us to talk about Maya. So if you had a chance, you should take a picture of your grandmother, a picture of your mother, a picture of yourself, and a picture of Maya. And try and do a collage of those 4 pictures and put it somewhere there. Because for me, that represents the mutation, the transmission, trials, strength, problems, and challenges, and what one generation is passing on to another generation. And look at your grandmother, father passes away, takes you back, takes your father back to your home village, asks for land, develops, grows your father with his brother, boom. And from that, there comes your father. South Africa is in same situation. Your mother has moved away from you. You was taken back to your mother, grandmother, looked after. The woman's struggle continues. Boom! Out of your mother comes out you. Here you are, professional and while you are busy working, traveling around the world and doing everything else, when you look on your shoulder, there is Maya. The question is the storyline changing for the African woman? I'm looking at 4 generations in you. Right now, I have a privilege of talking to your grandmother, I have a privilege of talking to you, your mother, and I have a privilege of talking to your daughter in one chair. I want to zoom into you.
Wow. I think all these women play a role in my life, so they are all me. I am my grandmother, I am my mother, I am my great-grandmother. What has changed is the time frame. What has changed is the space we are in that talks to colonialism, globalization, digitization, colonization. But the strife of women remains quite a permanent issue that seems to not be changing so much. However, what does it require to change? For me, let me speak for me. So I thought, let me have a great education. Let me invest in education. Let me get somewhere. Let me write.
How far did you go on that?
I am a candidate, a PhD candidate.
Dr. Muzendo.
I want to be Dr. Muzenda.
No, I'll convey that on you before they do it. Let me convey it on you that it will be done.
And even through all these opportunities that may come, there is still a way of trying to assert yourself. I think it's a belief system. I think it's understanding your identity, understanding who you are, understanding what values you place in yourself. What do you believe you have? Because when you talk about empowerment, again, for me, it's a contentious issue. You know, who empowers me based on what?
And why?
And why?
Why do you want to empower me?
Why do you want to
to me,
empower me? What is the game?
It's like a lady sitting in a restaurant and someone says, I want to buy you a drink. You'll be a fool to say, oh, please make them 4. In the back of your head, the first question is,
why?
Did I ask? Why? Because if you don't answer the why part, I might have to deal with 3 hours later consequences of, but I bought you a drink. But you did not tell me that the drink
is a contract.
Was a contract. So even if you're talking women empowerment, the question is, why does the white man want to empower black women? Why does the black government want to empower black women? Why do you want to empower women? Are you saying that equality of men and women must be compromised? Are you saying women are behind? You want to bring them to the fore? Or are you saying as business that we're able to deal with women better? Let's push the men to the back. So when you're talking women empowerment, I want us to classically maybe place our minds and answer the why.
I think there are many reasons. For me, I think I look at empowerment and there are different ways in which empowerment is used. In the labor market is used to derive more profits out of you. It means you are a better person, you have been well developed, you have been capacitated. It means you can work more, maybe even for less.
For less.
That's the profit world.
That's true.
Okay, that's one.
That's true. Because now at that level you're working for dignity now.
Well, that's exploitation. So the fact that we might feel empowered by a course that you take and so forth, it also means your employee is expecting
more return.
Of course.
You get empowered, and by the time you're actually 45 or 50, you have all the power that you need. Then you get a loan for the house, which is going to take you 25 years to pay. By the time you are retiring from your office work,
have a mortgage.
You are still. So the question I'm asking, back to square one, are you empowered? Because by the time you have all the money, you're a dead man. You have 6 million or 1.5 million as a funeral cover. Are you telling me that if you had given me 1.5 million rand at the age of 55 or 45, I would not have been able to take 1.5 million and actually invest it and have a better life? Why must I have more money when I die? So when you talk about empowerment, I want us to maybe to question it intrinsically and say, are we talking of empowerment in the now, in the later, or in the year after? Are we talking about empowerment so that men can not abuse women, or now women can now abuse men? I have a woman in Center who had 4 boyfriends in Alexander, bought them cars, bought them a house. She beat one of them to pulp the other day because she found him with a girlfriend. She's a big senior woman in Joburg, in Center, running an office. She can afford. She has no husband, but now she can afford. Male, young, handsome, husbands, let's use the correct word, prostitutes. She has 4 of them.
Gigolo.
She has rendered them in a house. Of course, when it comes to women, you always find better words. But let's just use the traditional. Are you okay? Let's use the traditional. Because women have been abused for the longest. Let's maybe also throw the same towel across the road. She has 4 young male prostitutes that are servicing her. Then she finds one of them with a boyfriend. And she beats him to pulp. It's her car, it's her house, it's her techies, it's her glasses, it's her salaries. Boy has no respect. And of course, men have been doing it for the longest time. Are we saying women empowerment is actually coming with women in positions of power to an extent of societal breakdown? Let me say this as myself. I won't say much after this, but as me. You are our last source of hope as women in Africa. And when women move away from that last corner of sanity that is left in the society, and they say we are also migrating into industrialization, there's nothing left.
I think there is a threat of, I hear where we need to go as women, and having sort of shared all these women, I think for me, personally, I'm questioning why women were empowered and in what context. I'm not questioning if they didn't need it or not, but what was their main agenda? So we talked about women having to be given an opportunity and access to finance. Women, when we came to a certain point when women wanted to go and when women wanted to buy houses or get a loan, they were asked, where's your husband? So when we said women are now educated or they have the leverage or collateral to be able to go and get a loan, they are doing it. But also there is a...
Without the husband.
Without the husband. So could we reconcile the men and women in trying to understand, do we understand what empowerment meant to be? Do we understand what equality was about? Because when we started speaking about gender equality, we were talking about women because they were far behind. Women were still regarded as minors, from the colonial system. Children, right? So all of that said, can we try and find balance? And as we're trying to work towards balance, we also are met with different other colonial neoliberalism, patriarchy. Let's bring it in there. Okay? And then we're also talking to profit. We're talking to capitalism that wants labor. So we know that for the longest time, women on farms have been contained in a farm because there is free labor. They have children, and those children become laborers on the farms. Okay? We've known that African women...
You actually reproduce for labor.
We're reproducing for labor. We also know that most women in Africa, most African products or produce, agricultural produce, is women's labor.
And
but
children,
there is nothing to show for it, right? And children. There is nothing to show for it.
60 to 80% of cocoa is women.
So how do we come back to reconcile the fact that you have women working on land, you have men in the mines? We also now, when we're talking to today, we have lost many men to HIV during the time when we were doing cross-border transportation, when we were also doing mining, men in the mines. We've lost communities. You know, I know of my uncles that came to, when it was Wenera, they came to Johannesburg.
Then they came back with a bicycle. You know those three-speed bicycles?
With a bell. So maybe the triviality of equality is, what did it mean after all? Because were we to remain as families, as communities, as individuals, what happened to all of that? So the social fabric of what I know from my grandmother no longer exists because everybody else moved to the urban centers to look for employment and so forth and so forth. And
still unemployed.
And still unemployed. If employed, underpaid. If employed, still the working poor because you can't invest.
We have 5 minutes left. I have a stick with me here. The past, the present, and the future. I owe you one, please remind me. Must give you a gift. But I left it at home, but I'll make it available to you.
Thank you.
The past, the present, and the future. Women, men, children, business, politics, economics. You can go on and on and on. America is the West. Europe is the North. China is the East. Africa is the South. The Western worldview, Northern worldview, Eastern worldview, Southern worldview. Ubuntu, Eastern mysticism, Northern religious, cultural, spiritual, Christian understanding, and the Western ideology, the great I. You look at women empowerment. You're a doctorate student now, so you're talking to a fellow professor now. So let's push the graph a little bit higher, can we?
Let's try.
Can we try?
Let's try. Let's do it.
Women empowerment. What model are we using for women empowerment? What time frame are we discussing in terms of women empowerment? Are we empowering them for the future, empowering them for the present, or liberating them from the past? Are we empowering them according to Ubuntu? Because when you get married into my family, you are the rightful heir to everything that my family has, the cattle, the land, the children, and everything. That is a fact in African culture. And if women want more power than that, please go next door. Go to China. The Chinese method of empowerment. Chinese women, subordinate, locked up behind the doors, men and kings and etc., run their lives. Indian women, they have their own worldview. The European, with his Christian experience, who dominated the African culture, has a problem with his wife. And he transmitted that to the African Christian space. So the way he teaches the African to treat his wife is the way he treats his wife. And underpinning that is religion. Coming finally to the Western concept, where there's now no more men, there's no more women. We have lost all sense of sex. We're just human beings. When you talk of empowerment, if you are looking from the West, then there's no empowerment at all, because gender is no longer an issue. If you are talking about Europe, there's no empowerment, because until you change the patriarchy of the biblical text, women are an afterthought of God. When he found that man was lonely, then he makes a woman to look after the man. We talk about the Chinese method of empowerment, then women must be in the kitchen, making food. They must only be seen and never to be heard. We talk about African empowerment. We've had queens who have run armies, who have become kings, who have run military, and we have a history of African women. Jaji. So when you talk about women empowerment, in the last 2 minutes, I'm sorry I took your time. When you talk about empowerment, and you're looking at my stick, how are you going to empower African women?
I think context matters. Context matters, and I think we lost it when we have modeled African issues for the Western world. One size fits all model does not work. For me, I want to take away the fact that what is it for Africa to do for itself? Because if the Congo can feed all of Africa with its resources, what is the problem for Africa?
Leadership.
Leadership, because of the Western influence of handshakes and so forth.
Brown envelopes.
Brown envelopes. So when do we then begin to be Africans, whatever that means? Because there is also a degenerative of Africans, where being African is not necessarily the best thing, because Africans are primitive, Africans are this, because that's the story. That was the narrative.
You need longer hair, you need whiter skin.
That was the narrative. And so empowerment even has come to a point where empowerment is about what we look like, what we eat, and how we keep our hair, what you're talking about. That's part of empowerment. Be who you are, like who you are, enjoy your bodies, whatever. So it's become so fickle to some extent. And yet the essence of us as African, the culture, whatever that is for each individual who comes from wherever they come from, has been toned down, has been hidden away, the hidden languages that we have, the most exciting things. I think context, to understand your identity where you are, is important. So we could get lost. We are living the dysfunctionality of our society. We are mirroring ourselves. I mean, what we see is actually who we've become. So maybe the need to accept where we are, reconcile as best as we can of men and women and society as a whole, and understand the values of what we thought about when we talked about Ubuntu, when we talked about Africa. But where do we go to get that?
What's your final parting shot to the African women out there? One sentence.
African women are so powerful. The realization is important and is urgent.
It's urgent. What's your one-word advice for the African men out there?
Be the African man you are and stand for who you are.
One last word for the African children out there.
Love Africa.
My name is Maponga Jeji Garamboko Garamashamba Uda Chira Nawana Wanji. Wo Quido Tizwana Garama Matanda no Wara Chiwiteza. Chiwiteza Chinoteza Warikuri, Warpeduano Tambana Chumtambo Paro, Chiramba Sesam Ponango Kubana Majakumagaro Chira Nawana Wanji. Tizwana Mukanya, on a Mama home, on a Makwira meet, on a Mshamba Negorem Ponango Kuban. Till we see you again. Don't do what I wouldn't do, but if you decide to do it better.